It's Electric Drives. Your electric vehicle future starts right now. Welcome to the show. I'm Anthony Algmin, and I'm joined by my co-host, Bob Reese. It wasn't too long ago I started driving an electric vehicle, and it wasn't easy to learn everything I needed to know to make that transition. And Bob was a key resource in making that possible for me. We created the show to make it easier for others looking to move to electric, and in a world of $5 and $6 gasoline, that's more and more people every day. Our goal with Electric Drives is to cover the basics, brought to you by real people with real jobs, real commutes, real road trips, and who are relying on real vehicles to get us to all of those. We're out there using electric vehicles in normal lives, and we'll share the wisdom we've gained from living with EVs every day. You can join in the conversation by sending your questions and topic ideas on our Facebook group to questions@electricdrives.us, or become a patron at patreon.com/electric drives to get more direct access and help support the show. We're here to share and learn together and reduce the confusion we encounter when going from gasoline to electric vehicles. Today, our electric drives bring us to learn about the basics of charging, specifically level 1, level 2, and level 3 charging. Bob, what are level 1, level 2, and level 3 charging?
Oh, level 1 is probably the easiest, and that's the most readily available in some ways. Level 1 is just a regular 110 outlet, which you'll find in your garage, and I do a lot of traveling on the road, and a lot of hotels will have an outdoor outlet for electric heaters for trucks and so on, for engine block heaters. And so I use a level 1 type of charger, and generally cars are coming from the factory with a level 1 type of charger with it. The downside is that a level 1 will only provide you with about 1 kilowatt per hour of energy. And so if you got a 60 kilowatt battery, you're going to take 60 hours to charge it from dead. Now, majority of the time, you're just operating in a sweet spot. You might be operating between 20% and 80% of your battery. Mm-hmm. So you might have 40 miles on the low side, and you might have 150 or 200 miles on the high side. And how much do you need for your daily driving? Well, my daughter drives roughly 20 miles or so, or 30 miles for work, as a teacher and an instructor. So she'll plug in at night into the wall outlet and charge overnight, and she'll have her 30-mile range on her plug-in hybrid. So, or my wife will plug in her car because she's only driving, 5-10 miles a day. So that'll only take her, if it's 10 miles and 4 kilowatts per hour, she might only need 2 hours of charge time. So, so that takes care of level 1.
So wait, okay. So it takes care of level 1, and I understood what you're talking about. I want to break this down even more simple for those folks that are out there. First off, a kilowatt is effectively a unit of how much energy, right?
Correct.
So it's a car is typical. So all of us out here, we're familiar with miles per gallon. Right. We think about the miles, the distance we can go per gallon of gasoline. So in the electric vehicle equivalent of that is how many miles can we get out of a kilowatt of energy? And is that correct?
Right. So you might have a range between 2 and 5.
2 and 5. And the way I drive, it's usually closer to 2. And the way you drive, it's usually 4 or more. And
yes,
depending, but I mean, then it can be affected by wind. It can be affected by temperature. It can be affected by
rain.
The nature of the roads. How
concrete
full your
asphalt.
Yeah, how full your tire pressure.
Air
Jeez,
pressure.
I couldn't get that. But so there's many factors in that. But that's the key. So if you're thinking about, and we're talking level 1 is literally taking your electric vehicle and plugging that into the classic wall outlet that has the 2-prong or probably a 3-prong outlet. It has a ground.
Yes.
I would hope they have a ground, but it's plugging that in, no more complicated than plugging in a power tool. And it's just a heck of a big battery connected to that power tool. And it's a power tool that moves you around. And that's really the key is, and you talked about the size, like kilowatt hour batteries. I don't even want to go to that point yet, because that's where all cars, just like they have different gas tanks in gasoline powered vehicles, all cars come with varying sizes of batteries, and the batteries are going to make an impact on that distance. This is a function of battery electric vehicles that doesn't really have a gasoline equivalent. Like, you don't have the old school like Ford Taurus with a 12-gallon gas tank and one with a 20-gallon gas tank. Like, that's not a thing you would think about. And so in the battery world, we're going to save that conversation for when we're talking about electric vehicle considerations, and when we're thinking about what's important to us when we're purchasing an electric vehicle, because as you might imagine, cars with bigger batteries are going to be more expensive. And so we'll cover that later. But what we really want to think about is in the way you were talking about is we're thinking about a function of how long is it taking to charge the car? How many miles are you getting out of that time? And that's really what's important. There's math and kilowatts and other things that we don't intuitively understand because we haven't been dealing with them our whole lives. But what we do understand is time and distance. And that's really where we're getting at it. So if we're saying per hour plugged into the wall, you can get 3 to 5 miles of range on average. And that's a good just initial ballpark for level 1. And like you said, there are typically a level 1 charger comes with most vehicles, not necessarily all vehicles anymore, but most vehicles at least provide you with level 1 charging. But it's also something that you can get almost anywhere. You can get at your home guaranteed. You can get at a hotel a lot of the time. If you can plug something in, you can use level 1 charging. And that's a really important thing for people to know. And especially when, like, a lot of us used to have commutes and really long things, or maybe we're just driving to a train station. The idea that you don't even need to wire up your house with anything more than what you already have there because you're only driving 5 miles to a train station. That may be all you really need, except for the occasional fast charging or other kind of charging session when you really have a variance in what your norm is. But we can talk about that too. So I think now covered level 1, right? Level 1, pretty simple. And I want to be clear too, just so people know where we're coming from. Bob, we talked about in the last episode, you're always on the road. You're doing a lot of your charging at public charging stations, which is where we'll get into with this level 2 and level 3. But you also plug in level 1, like you just described, sometimes at hotels, often at home. But in your home, you only have the level 1, right? You are plugging that in, and you're sharing those across several
3
different vehicles. Yeah. And we've been talking for years, and you're like, oh, wait, I've got to go unplug, move the car so my wife can plug in because she's got to do a thing. And like, you think about those things, but that's about as like complicated as it can be given the fact that you have a level 1 charging limitation in your current home. And that's how it is. And that's for a lot of people too. It's like in the city, in a condo, you may at best have that kind of just level 1 charging in your home. But as Bob will attest, that doesn't mean an electric vehicle can't be in your future too. Like, this is something that is very workable. And that's what we want, Bob's experience to be showing everybody is that, hey, this is something that if you're interested in doing it, this is a manageable situation.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So let's go on to level 2 now. What's level 2?
Okay. Level 2 is 220, which sometimes you'll have at home. You might have a dryer outlet or some other thing. You can easily set up 220 at home. You, in fact, install the 220 system in your house.
Right.
And these are all taking standard AC types of power supplies and just rewiring them for the purpose. So 220 you might also find at your local grocery store. They'll have a charger for free, or your Panera Bread or something like that. They'll have a charger out there for the customers to use for maybe a half hour or an hour while they're shopping. And it's more of a convenience, but it adds anywhere between roughly 3 and 19 kilowatts per hour of energy to the battery.
Right.
Some of the cars only can accept 3, like my plug-in hybrid only accepts 3 kilowatts per hour. So that would give me roughly 12 miles of range per hour, while some of the other modern cars, like your car, will take on an order of maybe 20 or 30 miles per hour plugged into the 220.
So this brings up a couple points that I think are important for people to understand, is that in each of these categories, especially once we move beyond level 1, there's ranges within each of these main levels of how much charge is provided by the source and how much is accepted by the car. And either one can limit how quickly you're able to add miles to your range, which is what we care about. How much range, how much time. And to your point, things like restaurants, sometimes public parking, government buildings, or parks are big, and they'll install. If you hear destination charging, that's typically a level 2 scenario. If you're plugging into the higher voltage, the 220 like you said, the washing machines or something like that, if you have that kind of hookup, you could do that. They sell like what are called EVSEs, so electric vehicle supply equipment. I think that's what that stands for. That is a what normal folk call charging stations, or destination charging stations, level 2 charging stations. That's what I hardwired in my house, and we'll talk about that in more complexity on a future episode about some of the differences to think about when you're getting that wired up in a house. That's a different topic for a different show. But those can also be plugged in, and then like you have your just regular plug for the going from the car to a wall outlet for level 1, you can actually have the car go from your car, the plug go from your car to this EVSE or this charging station that's plugged into the wall, and then it just hooks into your car, and it's ready for you to use to get that higher capacity. But the key thing is that a level 2 charging station still runs on alternating current, and it will provide somewhere between, what did we say? It was between about 12 miles per hour additional range to, what would you say on the high end? 40, maybe 35, maybe.
Yeah, what's yours on the high end?
Yeah, I'm not even sure what mine is on the high end. Probably close to that. Probably 35, 40 on the high end. It really depends too on how we drive. And as we've established, I drive a little bit fast and a little bit accelerate-y, so it's probably less miles for me personally. But others that drive a little bit more conservatively might be able to eke out a little bit more. But that's also a factor, right? Like you have the supply coming in, and then how quickly do you use those electrons going out based on the way that you're driving. If you're driving fast, if you're accelerating quickly, depending on the nature of your driving. If it's odd with electric vehicles, if you stop and start, so city driving for electric vehicles, because of that regenerative braking, they tend to do better range-wise in city driving than they do on open expressways, because there's nothing to regenerate there. They're just constantly losing those electrons to keep it going, and they're pushing all that air out of the way while they're going so fast. So you're actually more efficient at lower speeds than even a gas-powered car, even though gasoline-powered cars, if they can keep a consistent 50 miles an hour, they're going to be far more efficient than they are at 80 miles an hour. But it's more pronounced, and the impacts of it are more pronounced in an electric vehicle. But regardless, level 2 charging, you love it, because the other big thing about this is that level 2 charging can often be free. Is that you can plug into that Panera or that grocery store, and they usually aren't charging. Now, there are cases where they do. Certainly sometimes workplaces or what have you, they'll pass on the cost, but usually it's nominal. And a lot of times with level 1, it's almost always free because you're getting it at such a low rate. There wouldn't be a whole lot of point to get a lot of fees around that very small trickle of energy comparatively. But level 2 is a pretty cool sweet spot, because as you get to level 3, as we get to the DC fast charging, you're almost always paying. Whereas in level 2, if you can use those, plug it at a hotel overnight, awesome. Full battery in the morning, and it didn't cost you a dime. How often do you get to do that in a gasoline powered car? Pretty much never, right?
Right, and it doesn't cost the owner that much, because if you take on 60 kilowatts of energy for your battery, and that's pretty depleted battery in order to need 60 kilowatts, and your cost of electricity is 10 cents a kilowatt, that's only $6 to the owner of the building or the storefront or whatever. So that's why you see these cropping up at restaurants, some gas stations are even going that way. I know of 2 gas stations that have level 2 and DC fast chargers, which is kind of a unique twist. So it's not much cost for the electricity, but it's a way of getting a person to stop there and make a purchase there rather than going across the street to a place that doesn't have a charger.
That's right. And if you have like real-time pricing, like I have in Chicagoland area, I'm lucky to have real-time pricing, and I'm charging overnight. My commute, 38 miles each way to the office, gasoline was costing me $15 to $18. Now it costs me under $2 in electricity. If you're a business or what have you, and you're giving people that kind of benefit and getting them to stay at your hotel and paying the $100 a night or $200 a night, it's an easy spend to get that business compared to other things that it might take to attract that. Because I will, and I know you do this.
Oh, yeah.
I will look and search which hotels have destination charging. I'm staying there. Even, hey, I don't even like to rent cars or whatever. Even if I'm not driving to the place, I want to go to the businesses that are supporting the electric vehicles of the world, because next time I might drive and I'm going to stay at that property then too. And I want to make sure that they get business so that they're there the next time I want to come back.
Right.
So let's move on to level 3 charging, because we're going to cover charging on multiple episodes. And I also have to clue the audience in too. We said before we started this recording, Bob's like, there's no way we're going to go 20 minutes on this. I'm like, you wait. We haven't done enough episodes yet. I know I can fill the time. And we're now going to push way past 20 minutes on this. Yeah. So anyway, level 3 charging, the most complicated charging. Give me the overview on that.
DC fast charging, and the cost of installation is quite a bit, because it can go on the low side for maybe $5,000 to a couple $100,000 depending upon how fast you're going. Typically you'll find the low cost ones are typically about 25 kilowatts. See a number of Harley Davidson dealerships for their electric motorcycles have the real slow chargers, but then you're seeing I've forgotten the name of the place that's putting in a lot of 50 kilowatt chargers for free. Volta, VOLTA.
Oh yeah.
I've seen them coming into a couple gas stations where they'll have a charger there so that they bring in the people to use the cafe that they might have in the gas station, or buy the overpriced drinks and other paraphernalia they have in the store, the convenience food aspects. But you'll see them also at, there's a couple Amazon Fresh locations that have DC fast chargers that are 50 kilowatt chargers. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you'll see 350 kilowatt chargers for some of the cars on a long distance run type of thing. If you're driving cross country and you need a real fast charge, you can get it at those locations if your car will accept 350 kilowatts, which that's probably just a handful of manufacturers right now. But everybody's going in the direction, because the state of the art on my 2015 plug-in hybrid was 3 kilowatts per hour. And now you're looking at pushing 350 kilowatts per hour, and there's going to be even demands for faster chargers than that as you get the electric trucks coming into the marketplace down the road.
Yeah, and that's, there's so many conversations we're going to have around charging and charging curves and how quickly the car can suck in those electrons and all of that. What I want to talk about though is, like, because we think there's a decent amount of variance in level 2. We were talking, 12 to 40 miles per hour in additional range. You mentioned that some of these quote unquote fast charging start at 25 kilowatts, which is really not much beyond the level 2 charging, and it can go much, much higher if your car can handle it. Now, it's important to note that the DC fast charging is something that is not supported by all vehicles. More and more of the new ones, most of the new ones, if not all of the new ones, support it to some capacity, but there's a lot of limitations in terms of how much the individual car batteries can bring that in. Again,
oh yeah,
higher end cars, more expensive cars are going to be able to suck that energy in faster, even if the charging supplier, the EVSE and the DC fast charger, can supply faster electricity. Your car may not be able to take it, so it may be a moot point. Vice versa, like, your car can only suck in what the supply can manage, and sometimes that can vary. And the other thing that we haven't mentioned is this notion of sometimes you're in a place where there may be 2 plugs connected to one circuit, and when both are being used, the flow of electrons gets cut in half to each of the consumers. So that can be a variance that doesn't matter. And there is, at least, you ever go to a gas station where the pump's real slow? I don't know if that's often caused from a bunch of people using pumps at the same time, but in the case of electrons, that's what's happening, is that there's only so much that total circuit can actually supply at once, and so they have to throttle the individual stations to do that. And so we'll have other episodes where we're talking about charging etiquette and what to do at public fast charging locations and all of that. Interest of time, we won't talk about that much today, but until we get to that, just note, don't pull in right next to the other car. Park further away. Use like urinal strategy for the guys out there. Like, go as far apart as possible, because you'll be least likely to be sharing that same circuit. So, things to think about. I think this is the key to this today, is to just introduce you. There's 3 core levels. The DC fast charging level 3 is going to be the fastest. All of them have variance within them that can be a multitude of factors. What we want to have are questions from you, and what we envision this podcast to be much of the time is having conversations with individuals or getting questions from the community about specific scenarios that we can talk through that others can relate to. Because really, we can talk about all these general things, but you care about one thing. You care about your situation. You care about your road trip. You care about what is your car capable of doing. And I think the best way to address that is to address that head on and talk about those specific things, and others can learn from it, because they're going to have those same questions too. So with that, given that we're kind of out of time, which I'm quite proud to say that we've crushed our goal of trying to come in under 20 minutes. I have another podcast where I have never been under time, and so far so good on this one. I am also not able to be punctual. So with that, let's wrap it up for today. There's a lot more charging conversations to come. Bob, thank you for your wisdom as always. Everyone, thank you for listening, spending a little bit of time with us. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that YouTube bell icon. Please join our Facebook group and send your questions and topic suggestions to questions@electricdrives.us. If you would like to get live virtual recording studio access when we're doing our recordings, get your questions and topic suggestions to the top of the list, and help support the show, join us on patreon.com/electricdrives. Thank you for spending some time with us, and we wish you a smooth road ahead on your own electric drives.